The shuttle landed on the roof of the tall silver building just as the twin suns began to set, stepped out and stretched her tired body. She had been traveling for 3 days, sitting through meetings that seemed to have no end. Her silver skin felt dry from the recycled air of space stations. Her luminous purple eyes ached from reading too many reports. But she was home now. That thought alone made her smile. The door to their apartment slid open before she could touch it. There stood her husband, holding a cup of hot tea. Steam rose from it in gentle swirls. He was wearing his usual simple clothes, a soft brown shirt and loose pants. His dark hair was messy as always. His face was calm and warm. "Welcome home," he said quietly. "I heard your shuttle from the garden." Took the tea and breathed in its smell. It was her favorite kind, made from flowers that grew only on the southern continent. She did not know how he always remembered such small things. "Thank you," she said. "You did not have to wait." "I wanted to," he replied simply. They walked inside together. The apartment was clean and filled with soft golden light. Through the large windows, could see the great city of Prime stretching out below them. Towers of crystal and metal rose toward the orange sky. Flying vehicles moved between them like small glowing insects. It was a beautiful world, a powerful world. The species had ruled this region of space for 10,000 years. They were known for their wisdom, their grace, and their ancient traditions. And was one of their most respected diplomats. She came from a noble family with a history that stretched back generations. Her mother had been an ambassador. Her grandmother had helped write the laws of the Galactic Concord. Great things were expected of her, which made her choice of husband very strange to many people. Was human. Humans were a young species, only recently arrived on the galactic stage. They came from a small blue planet called Earth, somewhere in the outer regions. They had no great history, no ancient wisdom, no special abilities. They were considered ordinary at best, primitive at worst. Most nobles married other nobles. They formed alliances, combined fortunes, strengthened bloodlines. Marriage was strategy. But had married for love. She still remembered the day she met. It was 5 years ago, at the Concord Archives, the greatest library in this part of the galaxy. She had gone there to research an old trade agreement. She was frustrated, unable to find the document she needed among millions of records. A quiet voice had spoken from behind her. "May I help?" She had turned to find a human man with kind eyes and patient hands. He worked there as a librarian, organizing and preserving ancient texts. Within 10 minutes, he had found her document. Within an hour, they were talking about history, about philosophy, about the nature of peace and conflict. Within a year, they were married. Her family had been confused. Her colleagues had been shocked. The noble houses had whispered and gossiped. What was she thinking? A diplomat marrying a human librarian. He had no money, no status, no connections. He was nobody. But did not care what they thought. Was kind. That was the first thing she had noticed about him. He was kind in a way that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside, not performed for show but simply part of who he was. He listened when she spoke. He remembered things that mattered to her. He never raised his voice, never demanded anything, never tried to make himself seem important. He was also mysterious, though did not like to admit this. She knew almost nothing about his life before they met. When she asked about Earth, he would smile and change the subject. When she asked about his family, he would say they were gone and offer nothing more. When she asked what he did before becoming a librarian, he would pause for just a moment, a tiny pause that most people would not notice, and then say something vague about traveling. There were other strange things too. Sometimes she would wake in the middle of the night and find his side of the bed empty. She would find him standing at the window, staring out at the stars with an expression she could not read. When she asked if he was all right, the softness would return to his face, and he would say he just could not sleep. Sometimes packages would arrive for him, small boxes with no return address. He would take them without explanation and put them away somewhere she never saw. Once she had come home early and found him in the spare room. He was sitting very still, his eyes closed, his breathing slow and controlled. His hands rested on his knees in a precise position. When he noticed her, he stood up quickly and smiled, but there was something in his eyes, something sharp and alert that vanished as fast as it appeared. She never asked about these things. She told herself it was because she trusted him. She told herself it was because everyone had private corners of their soul. She told herself the past did not matter, only the present. But sometimes, late at night, she wondered. Tonight, however, she was too tired to wonder. She sat down on their soft couch and let the warmth of the tea fill her body. Sat beside her, not touching, just present. That was another thing she loved about him. He never crowded her. He simply existed nearby, solid and reliable. "How was the summit?" he asked. "Difficult," she admitted. "The hegemony is growing more aggressive. Their fleet movements concern everyone, but no one can agree on what to do." Nodded slowly. For a moment, something flickered across his face, something hard and cold like winter wind. But it was gone so quickly that thought she must have imagined it. "I am sure you will find a way," he said gently. "You always do." She leaned her head against his shoulder and closed her eyes. Outside, the sun's finished setting and the stars began to appear. Somewhere out there, among those countless points of light, danger was gathering. But here, in this quiet apartment with this quiet man, felt safe. She did not know that her husband had once been the most dangerous soldier humanity ever produced. She did not know that beneath the floorboards of their bedroom, wrapped in cloth and memory, lay a sword that had ended more lives than she could imagine. She did not know that the coming weeks would reveal secrets that would shake the galaxy itself. For now she simply rested, grateful for the peace, and held her gently, watching the stars with eyes that had seen too much. The weeks that followed were filled with fear. Every day brought new reports from the borders. The hegemony was moving. Their warships gathered like storm clouds at the edge of space. Their soldiers numbered in the billions. Their weapons were designed for one purpose only: destruction. Spent most of her time in the council chambers, arguing with other diplomats, reading intelligence reports, trying to find some path to peace. But the hegemony did not want peace. They wanted conquest. And their leader, the warlord called, wanted blood. Was a legend among the stars. He was massive, standing nearly 3 meters tall, with gray armor fused to his body and eyes that glowed like burning coals. He had conquered 17 worlds. He had killed over 200 champions in ritual combat. No one had ever defeated him. No one had even come close. He ruled the hegemony through terror. His soldiers worshipped him as a god of war. His enemies whispered his name like a curse. And now he had turned his attention to Prime. "We should negotiate," said one diplomat at the council meeting. "Offer them trade rights, perhaps some border territories, anything to avoid war." "They do not want trade," another replied bitterly. "They want submission, does not negotiate, he demands." Listen to them argue back and forth. She felt tired in a way that sleep could not fix. Every option seemed to lead to darkness. Fight and millions would die. Surrender and everything her people had built would be lost. When she came home that night, was watching the news on their display screen. His face was still, his body very quiet. The screen showed images of hegemony warships, massive black vessels bristling with weapons, each one capable of burning a city to ash. "You should eat something," said softly. Did not respond. His eyes stayed fixed on the screen. She walked closer and touched his shoulder. He turned to look at her, and for a moment she did not recognize him. His eyes were different, darker somehow, colder, like windows into a frozen place. Then he blinked and the warmth returned. "Sorry," he said, "I was thinking." "About what?" He paused, that tiny pause she had noticed before. about how to keep you safe. She did not know what to say to that, so she simply sat beside him, and together they watched the news until the display finally went dark. 3 days later, the assassins came. Was at the council again, trapped in another endless meeting. She did not hear about what happened until she came home. The door to their apartment was slightly open. Her heart stopped. She pushed through, expecting destruction, expecting blood, expecting the worst. Instead, she found 3 figures lying in the hallway. They were dressed in black, their faces hidden by masks. They were bound with rope, their hands and feet tied in complex knots that seemed impossible to escape. They were unconscious but alive. Standing in the kitchen, calmly stirring a pot of soup, was. "Oh, you are home," he said. "Dinner will be ready soon." Stared at the bodies, then at her husband, then at the bodies again. "What happened?" she managed to ask. "They broke in while I was reading," said simply. "I handled it." "You handled it?" "Yes." He said nothing more. He just continued stirring the soup, as if 3 professional killers lying unconscious in their hallway was the most normal thing in the world. His mind raced. She looked at the assassins more carefully. Their equipment was expensive military grade. Their weapons, scattered on the floor, were illegal on Prime. These were not common thieves. These were trained killers, sent by someone with money and purpose. Sent, most likely, by the hegemony. And her husband, the quiet librarian, had defeated all 3 of them without a scratch. She said slowly, "Who are you?" He stopped stirring. His back was to her, so she could not see his face. The silence stretched like a wire about to snap. "I am your husband," he said finally. "That is who I am now." "Now, what does that mean? What about before?" He turned to face her. His expression was gentle, but there was something beneath it, something old and heavy, like a mountain buried under snow. "Before does not matter," he said. "I left that life behind. I became someone new, someone better." "Please," his voice was soft, almost pleading. "I will explain everything. I promise. But not tonight. Tonight, let me just be your husband. Let us eat dinner and pretend the world is not falling apart." Wanted to argue. She wanted to demand answers. But she saw the pain in his eyes, real pain, the kind that came from memories he did not want to touch. So she nodded. They ate dinner together. The soup was good. They talked about small things, her work at the council, a book he was reading, the flowers in his garden. They did not mention the assassins who were eventually taken away by security forces. But as lay in bed that night, unable to sleep, she could not stop thinking about what she had seen. The way the assassins were bound, so precise, so efficient. The way had shown no fear, no surprise. The way he had said, "I handled it," like he was describing a minor inconvenience. Who was the man she had married? What was he hiding? And when the darkness finally came, as she knew it would, whose side would he be on? Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere among them, hegemony warships drew closer. Somewhere, sharpened his blade and dreamed of conquest. And in a quiet apartment, a quiet man lay awake beside his wife, staring at the ceiling, remembering a past he had tried so hard to bury. The shadows were gathering. And soon, there would be no more room for secrets. The hegemony fleet arrived on a cold morning when the sky was gray with clouds. Was in the council chamber when the alarms began to sound. Diplomats rose from their seats in panic. Screens lit up across the walls, showing hundreds of warships emerging from faster-than-light travel, their black hulls blocking out the stars. At the center of the fleet was the flagship of a massive vessel called the Iron Judgment. It was said that had built it from the wreckage of every world he had ever conquered. Whether that was true or not, the ship was terrifying to behold. A message came through on all channels. The face filled every screen in the council chamber. He was even more frightening than the stories suggested. His gray armor seemed to grow from his skin like scales. His eyes burned with red fire. When he spoke, his voice shook the walls. "People of Prime," he said, "I am Supreme Commander of the Hegemony. Your time of independence has ended. You will surrender your world, your resources, and your leaders to me. You will become part of my empire. This is not a request. This is a fact." The council erupted in chaos. Some diplomats shouted in defiance. Others whispered in fear, stood frozen, watching the face of the monster on the screen. "However," continued, "I am not without honor. I offer you a choice. Send your greatest champion to face me in ritual combat. Single combat, blade against blade, according to the ancient traditions. If your champion wins, I will withdraw my fleet. If I win, which I will, your world becomes mine." He smiled. It was the smile of a predator looking at prey. "You have 1 day to decide. Choose wisely." The screen went dark. The council debated for hours. They called for volunteers. They searched for warriors who might stand a chance, but everyone knew the truth. No had ever trained for this kind of combat. Their strength was in diplomacy, in knowledge, in peace. They were not fighters. And was undefeated. 200 duels, 200 victories, 200 bodies. No one stepped forward. When finally returned home, she felt hollow. Her world was about to end, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. She walked through the door expecting to find reading or cooking, the same as always. Instead, she found him kneeling in their bedroom. The floorboards had been pulled up. A section of the floor that had walked over 1,000 times was now open, revealing a hidden space beneath. Held something in his hands, a long case, covered in dust, wrapped in old cloth. He looked up at her with eyes she did not recognize. "Close the door," he said quietly. "There is something I need to tell you." She closed the door. She sat down across from him, her heart beating fast. He placed the case between them and slowly unwrapped the cloth. Inside was a sword. It was not like any weapon had ever seen. The blade was made of black metal that seemed to drink the light. The edge was so sharp that looking at it hurt her eyes. The handle was wrapped in worn leather, shaped by years of use. Strange symbols were carved into the steel, writing in a language she did not know. "This is called Midnight," said. "I carried it for 15 years. I killed with it more times than I can count." Could not speak, she could only stare. "Before I was a librarian," continued, "I was a soldier, but not a regular soldier. I was part of something called the Silent Corps. We were Earth's most secret weapon. We went places that armies could not go. We did things that could never be spoken of. We ended wars before they began, or started them if that was what Earth needed." His voice was steady, but saw his hands tremble slightly as he touched the blade. "My name in those days was not. They called me the Whisper, because my enemies never heard me coming. I fought in the border wars, the Mars insurrection, the Nightfall campaign. I stood against monsters and I walked through fire and came out the other side." He looked up at her, and she saw tears forming in his eyes. "I was good at it, I was the best, and I hated every moment. Every life I took, every mission I completed, it ate away at me. I became something I did not want to be, so I left. I buried this sword. I changed my name. I traveled to the furthest corner of the galaxy I could find looking for peace." He reached out and took her hand. "And then I found you. And for the first time in my life, I felt like a person instead of a weapon. You saved me. You gave me a reason to be something better." Felt tears on her own cheeks now. Everything she thought she knew about her husband was changing, reshaping itself like water taking a new form. "Why are you telling me this now?" she whispered. His grip on her hand tightened. "Because tomorrow I am going to answer the challenge. I am going to face." "No," the word came out before she could stop it. "No, he is undefeated. He has killed hundreds. I know what he has done." His voice was calm. "And I know what I have done. He is strong, but I have faced strong enemies before. You could die." Yes, he did not flinch from the word. But if I do nothing, you will die. Everyone on this world will die or become slaves. I cannot allow that. I will not allow that." He lifted the sword, midnight, and looked at the black blade. Light seemed to bend around it, as if the weapon existed in a different reality than everything else. "I promised myself I would never hold this again," he said quietly. "I promised myself the killing was over, but some promises have to be broken." He looked at with love and sorrow and determination all mixed together. "I am not fighting for glory. I am not fighting because I want to. I am fighting because someone threatens my home. Someone threatens you, and that is something I cannot forgive." Moved forward and wrapped her arms around him. She held him tight, feeling his warmth, his heartbeat, the gentle strength that she had always sensed beneath his quiet exterior. "Come back to me," she said. "Promise me you will come back." He held her just as tight. "I will try," he said. "That is the only promise I can make." Outside, the hegemony fleet waited like hungry wolves. And inside a quiet apartment, a quiet man prepared to become a weapon once more. The arena was ancient. It had been built 10,000 years ago, when the still believed in trial by combat. The floor was made of white stone, cracked with age, stained with the memory of old blood. Tall pillars surrounded the fighting circle, carved with the names of warriors long dead. Above it all, the open sky showed both the orange glow of sunset and the dark shapes of hegemony warships. Billions watched. Every screen on Prime showed the arena. Every ship in the fleet broadcast the event to distant worlds. Species across the galaxy paused their lives to witness what would happen next. This was not just a duel. This was history. On one side of the arena stood. He was a giant. His gray armor gleamed in the dying light. His body was a mountain of muscle and metal built over centuries of warfare. In his hands he held his famous weapon, a plasma glaive, a massive staff with blades of burning energy at both ends. The weapon hummed with power, casting shifting shadows across the stone. He was smiling. He was always smiling before a kill. On the other side stood. He looked small. He wore simple clothes, the same kind he wore at home, comfortable and unremarkable. He carried no armor. His only weapon was the black sword at his hip, its blade still hidden in its sheath. His face was calm, his breathing slow and even. The crowd murmured, "Who was this human? Where was the champion? Surely this was some kind of joke." Stood at the edge of the arena, behind a barrier meant to protect observers. Her hands gripped the metal rail so hard her silver knuckles turned white. She wanted to scream, to run to him, to pull him away from this madness. But she stayed still. She had promised to let him fight. "So," said his voice booming across the arena, "this is the champion of Prime, a human, a tiny, fragile human." He laughed. The sound was like rocks grinding together. "I have killed humans before. They break so easily. Their bones crack, their spirits shatter. Is this truly the best you can offer?" Said nothing. He simply stood there watching, waiting. "No words," continued. "No brave speeches. No promises of victory." He raised his glaive, the plasma blade singing through the air. "Very well, let us end this quickly. I have worlds to conquer." The signal came, a deep bell that rang across the arena. The duel began. Moved first. Despite his massive size, he was fast, incredibly fast. He crossed the distance between them in 2 steps, his glaive sweeping in a deadly arc that could cut a shuttle in half. The blade passed through empty air. Was no longer there. He had not seemed to move. One moment he was standing in the path of the strike. The next moment he was 3 meters to the side, still calm, still watching. His sword remained in its sheath. Growled and attacked again. This time he moved faster, combining strikes in patterns that had ended countless warriors. His glaive was everywhere at once, high, low, spinning, thrusting. The plasma edges left burning trails in the air. The stone floor cracked beneath his feet. flowed around every strike like water around a stone. He did not block, he did not parry, he simply was not there when the blade arrived. His movements were so smooth, so natural, that it looked less like fighting and more like dancing. Every step was perfect. Every shift of weight was precise. The crowd fell silent. Even the hegemony soldiers stopped their cheering. This was impossible. No one moved like that. No one could move like that. "Hold still," roared. His attacks grew wilder, more desperate. "Fight me, coward, stand and face me." For the first time spoke. His voice was quiet, but somehow it carried across the entire arena. "I am facing you," he said. "You are simply too slow to notice." Screamed in rage. He channeled all his strength into a single massive overhead strike, a blow meant to split the planet itself. The glaive descended like a falling star. Drew his sword. What happened next, the recordings would show 100 times, 1,000 times, and people would still argue about what they saw. To most viewers, it looked like a single flash of black light. One moment's sword was in its sheath. The next moment it was back in its sheath. The movement in between was too fast for eyes to follow. Froze. His glaive stopped in midair. The plasma blades flickered and died. A thin line appeared on his armor, running from his right shoulder all the way down to his left hip. Then the armor fell apart. It did not crack or shatter. It simply separated, the two halves sliding away from each other like curtains opening on a stage. Blood followed, spreading across the white stone in a dark red river. Fell to his knees. He stared up with an expression that held no anger, no hatred, only wonder, only awe. "What are you?" he whispered. Looked down at him. His face held no triumph, no satisfaction, only a tired kind of sadness. "Just a librarian," he said quietly, "who wanted to go home." Tried to speak again, but the words would not come. His eyes dimmed. His massive body swayed once, twice, and then collapsed forward onto the stone. The greatest warrior the hegemony had ever known lay still, defeated at last. Silence held the arena. Then screamed, not in fear but in relief. She ran past the barriers, past the guards, across the blood-stained stone. She threw herself into his arms, holding him, feeling his heart beat against hers. "You did it," she said. "You came back." "I promised I would try," he replied softly. "I am glad I could keep that promise." Around them, the universe began to change. The hegemony fleet, bound by the ancient laws of combat, began to withdraw. Their warlord was dead. The challenge was lost. They had no choice but to honor the result. Across the galaxy, species that had dismissed humanity as weak and primitive now stared at their screens with new eyes. They saw a small, quiet man defeat a giant. They saw speed that should have been impossible. They saw a single strike end a legend. And they began to wonder. If this one human, this librarian, could do such a thing, what else were humans capable of? How many other quiet humans lived unremarkable lives, hiding abilities that could shake the stars? For the first time in centuries, the galaxy looked at humanity and felt something new. Fear. But did not care about the galaxy. He did not care about fear or respect or legend. He only cared about the woman in his arms, the home waiting for him, the peace he had fought so hard to protect. "Let us go home," he said. And together they walked out of the arena, leaving blood and history behind them. The days after the duel were strange. Returned to the council, but everything felt different. The diplomats who had once ignored her now listened to every word she spoke. Leaders from distant worlds sent messages asking for meetings. Her opinion suddenly mattered more than it ever had before. All because of who her husband was. Returned to the archives. He walked through the same doors he had walked through for years. He sat at the same desk. He organized the same ancient texts with the same patient care. But the other workers looked at him differently now. Some with respect, some with fear, some with a mix of both. He pretended not to notice. The recordings of the duel spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Every species, every world, every government watched the footage over and over. They studied the way he moved. They analyzed the impossible speed of his draw. They argued about what kind of training could produce such skill. Questions about humanity. The diplomatic channels that worked with began to buzz with nervous inquiries. Were there more humans like him? How many? Where were they hidden? Was Earth secretly training an army of unstoppable warriors? Earth itself gave no answers. Human diplomats smiled politely and said nothing useful. This made the galaxy even more nervous. Old alliances shifted. Species that had ignored humanity now sought trade agreements and friendships. Species that had planned to conquer human colonies quietly abandoned those plans. No one wanted to discover what other quiet humans might be hiding beneath their ordinary lives. Notice something interesting in the weeks that followed. Wherever she traveled, wherever she negotiated, the other diplomats were more careful, more polite, more willing to compromise. They looked at her and thought of her husband. They thought of what he had done in the arena. They did not want to make her unhappy. She was not sure how she felt about this. Power through fear was not something she had ever wanted, but she could not deny that it made her work easier. Agreements that would have taken months now took days. Conflicts that seemed impossible to solve suddenly found solutions. Peace, it seemed, sometimes needed the shadow of violence to survive. At home, life returned to something like normal. Still cooked dinner every night. He still tended his small garden on the balcony. He still read books in the evening while reviewed her work. To look at him, you would never guess he had killed the most feared warrior in the galaxy just weeks before. But saw the small changes. Sometimes he would pause while washing dishes, his hands still, his eyes distant. Sometimes she would wake at night and find him standing at the window again, staring at the stars with that unreadable expression. Sometimes, when loud noises happened suddenly, his body would tense in ways that spoke of old reflexes, old training that never fully disappeared. The sword, Midnight, was back beneath the floorboards, hidden away, waiting. She tried not to think about it, but she knew it was there. She could almost feel it sometimes, like a cold spot in their warm home. One evening, about a month after the duel, they sat together on the balcony. The twin suns were setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The city below glittered with lights. The garden flowers released their sweet scent into the cooling air. It was perfect, it was peaceful. Said softly, "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "Will you ever have to draw that sword again?" He was quiet for a long moment. She watched his profile, the gentle curve of his face, the slight lines around his eyes that spoke of years she knew nothing about. "I hope not," he said finally. "I have had enough of killing, enough of blood, enough of being the weapon in someone else's war." "But—" He turned to look at her. His eyes were warm, but beneath the warmth there was something hard and certain, a foundation of stone beneath still water. "But if someone threatens what I love, I will not hesitate. I tried to be a peaceful man. I wanted nothing more than to live quietly, to forget what I was capable of. And for a while, I succeeded." He reached out and took her hand. Then came, and I remembered something important. Peace is not passive. It is not simply the absence of conflict. Sometimes peace must be protected. Sometimes the gentle must become fierce so that gentleness can survive. Squeezed his hand. "I think I understand," she said. "You are not a weapon, you are a guardian." That is a kind way to say it. It is the true way to say it. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the last light fade from the sky. Stars began to appear, countless points of light scattered across the darkness. Somewhere out there, species were whispering about the human who had defeated. Stories were being told, legends were being born. But here on this small balcony there were no legends. Just a husband and wife, holding hands, enjoying the evening. "I have been thinking," said eventually. "About what?" "About us, about our future," she paused. "About children." Went very still. "Children," he repeated. "We have never discussed it. I was not sure if you wanted, if you could." She struggled to find the right words. "After everything you have been through, I did not know if you would want to bring new life into a galaxy like this." He was quiet for so long that she began to worry she had said something wrong. But when he finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "I have done terrible things. I have ended lives. I have created orphans and widows. For a long time, I did not think I deserved anything good. I thought I should spend my life alone, paying for my sins through solitude." He turned to face her fully, and she saw tears gathering in his eyes. "Then I met you, and you showed me that redemption is possible, that a person can change, that love can heal wounds that nothing else can reach." He lifted her hand and pressed it to his chest, over his heart. "If you want children, then yes. 1,000 times yes. I would be honored to build a family with you, to raise new life, to teach them kindness and courage and all the things I had to learn the hard way." Felt her own tears falling now. "They might inherit your skills," she said. "They might be warriors too. Then I will teach them something I wish someone had taught me, that true strength is not about fighting. It is about knowing when not to fight. It is about protecting, not destroying. It is about love, not fear." He pulled her into his arms, and they held each other as the night settled around them. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you too." Above them, the stars continued their eternal dance. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was changing, reshaping itself in response to what one quiet human had done. Old powers were nervous. New alliances were forming. The balance of civilization itself was shifting. But here, in a small apartment on Prime, none of that mattered. Here there was only love. Here there was only peace. And for now, that was enough.